3. Oh, the depth of the riches, both of the wisdom and knowledge of God. Romans 11:35. Oh, the depth of the riches, both of the wisdom and knowledge of God. How unreasonable are his judgments, and his ways past finding out. Here's the dilemma, folks. When this is all over and these lessons are done, you still are going to be pondering. You still say, it is far beyond me. Romans 11:34. Romans 11:34. For who hath known the mind of the Lord, or who hath become his counselor? Who counsels God? If I was God, I would do this. If I was God, I would do that. That's pride on your part.
That's right.
You have stepped out of bounds when you say God does anything that is not. If you say that God does anything that's unfair, you have stepped out of bounds. What is divine justice then, as we look at it? What is divine justice then? Here is a definition. I don't know if I wrote it down for you or not. Here is a definition of divine justice. It is an essential attribute of God, whereby he is infinitely and perfectly just in himself, of himself, for himself, from himself, and by himself, and no other. That's a heavy-duty theological definition. Let me say it again. It is the attribute of God. You remember we studied the attributes of God? That is, it belongs to his very essence, whereby he is infinitely and perfectly just in himself, of himself, for himself, from himself, and by himself, and none other. He cannot be anything but perfect and righteous. He cannot ever make a decision outside of himself. He is perfect and righteous, and what he does has to be righteous. And so if God does something, we have to say it had to be righteous whether I understand it or not. Right, Bill? A thing, the source of God's justice. So where does he get his source of God's justice? Is his own free will and nothing else. For whosoever he wills is just, and because he willed it, therefore it is just. Not because it's just, therefore he willed it. He willed it and it's just. A thing is just because God willed it. He does not will it because it is just by human standards. He sets the standard. God sets the standard. What he says becomes the standard. We set standards there are most standards that the world sets for us we don't like. We complain and fuss at the standards set on us, right? You do look different. Children don't like our standards. They argue, they fuss, they complain, they say it's not fair, and we turn around and we're human. It could be right, but with God it cannot be. Divine justice is of an entirely different order and character of human justice. And by the way, justice is not an issue anyway. Don't go there. Don't go there. Well, it's just not justice. Don't go there. If you push it, and if you talk about salvation, and you say it's just not just, listen, be careful, because if you got your justice, all of us would be in hell. Don't go very far. It's just not just that God saves some and some are not. Be careful, because it would be just that we all went to hell. It's not justice we want, it's what? Mercy and grace. You see, the creator of this universe owes us nothing to the creatures. Not what he has graciously is pleased, except what he's graciously is pleased to give to the elect. He does not owe us one thing. Well, you just owe us. If my child ever told me, Dad, you owe me, I'd slap him. I wouldn't do it. Now then, how could God be unjust? When whatever he does is just. Whatever he does is just. And the fact that he elects certain ones to be saved, they didn't deserve it anyway. How could that be just? This salvation is not a matter of justice. Put it down, it's a matter of grace. Pure grace. It always seems curious to me that God seems to be gracious most often to those who seem to be the most often undeserving. You ever notice that the people that are saved are those who you would think should never ever be saved because they live such a wretched, wicked life? And he chose the wicked, the Pharisees, the harlots, the prostitutes, the outcasts, the poor, the social rejected. He accepted them and he rejected the Pharisees. And that is the plan. Not many noble, not many mighty. He has chosen the base things of the world, and in many cases, and in fact, in most cases, the educated and the nobles are passed away. You really do not want to try to figure out from the standpoint of, is it fair? God did it, and that makes it just. Here it is. Here's the statement. God set the standard of fairness. God set the standard of fairness. If you don't understand what God does, that does not mean he doesn't live up to your standard. It means that your standard does not live up to his standard. Write 3 words down. He is God. That's a good thing to put up somewhere, Serena. He is God. In order to understand this matter of God choosing us to salvation, we have to go to Scripture. And I will from the start warn you, when we are all through with this study, there will still be an element of mystery in your mind, and there are 2 reasons for that. Number 1, you're fallen. You have a weak mind. I'm sorry, guys. You do not think pure divine thoughts. 2, you're infinite. That is, you cannot grasp the fullness of the infinite mind of God. We can only comprehend about this much of God. Oh, Paul said, I pray more that you'll be able to grasp the love of God more and more. Listen, I cannot get you to do things by making you feel guilty. 3 ways you can preach. You can preach where you make everybody feel guilty and you'll go out and do it because you feel guilty. Secondly, I give you a set of rules to live by. Here are 14 things that you need to do this week to get your life straightened out. Yeah, you'll get one and forget the others. Here's the third one. Here's the third one. The supremacy of Christ. If once you understand the supremacy of God and know who God is, you'll fall in love with him and you want to serve him. Amen. I don't want to preach Christ. I don't want to preach rules. I don't want to preach counseling. I want to preach Christ. Well, so this calls upon faith to trust God for what we know he has revealed in Scripture. And Peter gets into this subject by a second verse of this epistle. Man, he just starts off in the second verse. And Peter addresses his readers. It is his idea to identify his readers as chosen of God. Notice he says in verse 2, elect according to the foreknowledge of God. Right from the beginning, he addresses these 5 churches, or 5 cities, with all the churches in those cities, which is modern day church today, and he calls them the elect. So here's what I'm trying to say to you. Peter is establishing, you who I'm writing to have been elect. You are the chosen of God. And there was a reason that he said that to them. They needed to hear that. He does this in 2 ways. First, in their relationship to the earth, and secondly, he identifies them in their relationship to their place in heaven. Now, as far as earth goes, they live scattered throughout Pontus, Galatia, Cappadocia, Asia, and Bithynia. And as far as heaven goes, they are the chosen according to the foreknowledge of God, the earth. So he addresses them earthly, and he addresses them spiritually. Now let's look at their earthly identification. The readers whom Peter writes are said to be scattered throughout Asia as strangers. Now here's the relationship to their own. They are strangers, and they're scattered throughout Asia. Peter said they were scattered, and that means dispersion. It is a technical term for the disposition of the Jews throughout the world. John 7:35, James 1:1, they were scattered from their land to parts of the world. Some, because of their disobedience, Jews are all over the world. At one time, Jews were just in one place. But because of their disobedience, they got scattered, and they're all over the place. There are Jews everywhere. It's scattered abroad, Acts 8:1. Jews outside of Palestine, and James 1:1 for the sense here, the Jewish Christians, and that also includes Gentile Christians. Now here, in this verse, Peter uses the term not in the technical manner. It is scattered people. It would seem that Peter is in this context, does not have the Jews in mind. 1 Peter 1:17 says he is talking about people who are strangers on earth itself, not strangers from another culture. The Jews feel estranged from everybody else. But what Peter is saying, Christians are estranged, living in a strange world. Strangers sojourning for a while in a particular place. We're just passing through. This text seems to be saying the stranger is a person who is in an environment that is foreign to his nature and is doing war against his soul. A believer who is spiritually an alien. Here they were living in this time, living in a country that the culture just did not like Christians. But they were Christians. They were elect and chosen of God. They lived in a strange country. Go back and look at your history. Go back and find out what kind of climate that they were living in. Look, in some parts of the world today, a Christian is persecuted. Christians are put in jail. Christians in Iran, preachers and pastors are put in jail for proclaiming or proselyting even today. So they were scattered throughout the world, away from their true home. Philippians 3:3 says this. Philippians 3:3. We are of a spiritual nature. So that 1 Peter 1:2 says we are scattered in a spiritual sense. That is the church in the world. The church in the world is alien. So these 5 Roman provinces includes what we call Asia Minor, north and west of the Titarius mountain range, and today they are in Turkey, part of the Roman Empire.